And welcome back to Divorcing Your Mortgage. I'm your host, Marc Gertz. My guest this week is Michele Molitor. Michele is a trailblazer in personal transformation, and she helps people and companies thrive. For over 22 years, she has been utilizing her expertise as a coach, hypnotherapist, speaker, and author to intentionally address the pervasive mental health crisis impacting organizations large and small. Her nickname is the Mind Detective by her clients because Michele's innovative healing approach masterfully fuses scientific, somatic, and energetic principles for holistic transformation. That is a mouthful. Michele, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Mark, for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here with you.
My pleasure. Let's dive right in. We hear the term imposter syndrome a lot these days. That's something that you and I have talked about a little bit. What is it exactly, and what triggers it?
So, imposter syndrome is that pervasive feeling that people have that they feel like they're a fraud, despite their years of expertise, despite the accolades that they have achieved, because of an underlying feeling of self-doubt. They don't fully believe in themselves. They don't trust their gut necessarily. And so it creates a level of anxiety in them that fuels their inaction or their reactions in not so great ways.
Okay. I know a lot of people like that. What would be the cause of that?
Well, in my 20 something years of study on this topic, having overcome my own severe case of imposter syndrome
Uh-huh.
after getting bullied out of my corporate career, what causes it, the root of it is actually severe self-doubt. And self-doubt can look many ways. I've actually identified 5 different self-doubt archetypes that are at the root, the underbelly, if you will, of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is kind of like this nice, politically correct word that we can banter about. Oh, I have imposter syndrome, because it's easier to say that than go, yeah, I'm full of self-doubt. You probably don't want to hire me, right? So the different archetypes are caused by different aspects in our lives, different traumas or experiences that we've gone through that
Uh-huh.
then lead us to believe that we're not worthy, we're not good enough, we don't belong, we don't have the right stuff to accomplish the job, whatever that might be, despite years of expertise in whatever someone is doing. So it can be very debilitating if left unchecked.
Okay. Would you say imposter syndrome is pervasive?
Yes, actually, I recently gave a talk at Emory University, and we did a poll, and there was over 250 people on the call, and 79% of participants said they have experienced imposter syndrome since 2020. Right?
Wow.
That's pretty
Yeah,
high.
4 out of 5. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that is pretty high. Do you think that percentage was different because of the people that were on that call, or do you think it was representative of the Gen Pop?
I would say it was pretty representative. I've done a lot of research around this, and
Hmm.
other statistics and research that I've seen have quoted 3 out of 5 people have suffered from imposter syndrome. 7 out of 10 are dealing with it at some point in their career.
Uh-huh.
So I tend to work with folks more in their 40s to 60s, but it doesn't mean that younger people, and both men and women, don't suffer from it at some point. And it can be a little bit of imposter syndrome, or it can be really big and massive. Um, as I said, I got bullied out of my career, Mark. I was a creative director in web development in my former professional life, and 2 of the guys that I hired for my team made it pretty clear pretty early on they didn't like working for a woman, and they um, did all sorts of things to get me out of my position, and ultimately it worked. And it was really, really devastating and crushing to my sense of worth and my confidence and who am I, and created a massive case of corporate PTSD and imposter syndrome, leaving me really fearful and doubtful of, gosh, what do I do now? And I was literally terrified to hand my resume to anybody, The upside of that was that it had me discover coaching, and which turned out to be, oh, this is my life's calling and purpose. So I pivoted my career and started my own company in 2001 and have been doing it ever since. And I'm really passionate about helping people overcome their self-doubt and their fears from these traumatic events they've suffered from in their lives, whether that's at work or with a partner or a family member, anywhere in their lifetime. Because every time we go through events like this, it leaves an emotional scar. I call it emotional residue. It sits in your cellular body and stays there until you do the deeper work to actually release those emotions from your system.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. You work as a coach, right?
Correct.
But you're also a hypnotherapist.
Correct.
So are you working with people's pasts as a hypnotherapist or as a coach or both?
So I work with folks at a conscious and a subconscious level, Mark. Coaching, as you said very eloquently, coaching works with people where they are and how they want to move forward, right? All of that is happening at a conscious level. The past, all of the trauma that we suffered from at any point in our lifetime is living in your subconscious mind, which remembers everything that's ever happened to you. So by working with folks at that deeper subconscious level, we're able to get at the root causes of the ideas, the beliefs that they're holding about themselves now. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. Who am I? I'm a fraud. Where did that begin? And then we neutralize that emotional residue, move it out of the way, and then rewire their mindset, literally building new neural pathways in the brain with new empowering beliefs, habits, and strategies for success.
And that's what you do as a hypnotherapist.
Correct.
Okay. And when you're able to get them to push those things out of the way, then as a coach, you take them into the present and the future. Am I getting that correctly? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So I call my work rapid rewiring for a reason. So it combines coaching and hypnotherapy over a period of time, typically 3 to 6 months. So it's not an ongoing relationship that you would have necessarily like you would a therapist for talk therapy. And in the process, we're toggling between coaching sessions that work at that conscious level and hypnotherapy sessions that work at that deeper subconscious level. Combining it all together, it was what creates rapid results that have long-term positive impacts for clients.
So you're dealing with the past, but you're not dealing with it the way, let's say, an LMFT would.
Correct.
Over years.
Correct.
And consciously accessing the subconscious, you're going right in.
Yes, we're getting right at the root cause, which oftentimes has nothing to do with the thing that happened yesterday or the week before. It's oftentimes the things that happen between, 0 and 10 years old that continues to ripple forward until we decide, oh, I'm not that little 7-year-old anymore. I'm safe and I'm not in that same situation. But your nervous system doesn't necessarily know that. There's a part of your brain called your amygdala, and that is your fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. It's there to protect you. I like to call her Amy. Amy loves you. She just wants to keep you safe, right? But Amy is working off of old programming, just like if you were carrying around your new phone, but you were working off of, 2001 cellular phone data, right? What would that look like? It'd be like ka-dunk, 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 so you have to update your mental maps just as often as you update your phone programming, so to speak.
Right, because to Amy, what happened 50 years ago feels like yesterday.
Exactly, because anything that remotely looks like an event that happened in your past, Amy's like, oh, no, that looks scary. That could be dangerous, could be very dangerous. So we're not going to let you do that. And she will create, all sorts of drama or trauma or diversions to have you do something different instead of having you move forward in the direction that you actually want towards the goals you really want to achieve.
Hypnotherapy is something that a lot of people are sort of on the fence about. Okay. Have you had situations where you weren't able to put somebody under in hypnosis?
So we're always, as human beings, we go in and out of states of hypnosis all the time. right? So how often do you drive from your home to your office, right? And you're unconsciously driving the car, but you're thinking about 5 other things. That's actually a state of hypnosis.
Really?
Right? You're in that alpha brainwave state when your subconscious mind is handling the thing in the present, and your conscious mind is thinking about all these other things. And so different people go to different levels into a state of hypnosis or alpha brainwave state. It's that half awake, half asleep place, almost as if, when you first wake up from a nap,
Yep.
right? And your body's really relaxed. You don't really want to move, but you're aware of everything that's happening. That's the place that I take people to. It's no different than zoning out in front of the television, really. And all we're doing is tapping and accessing your whole brain to have it work for you instead of having Amy work against you.
That makes sense. But by the same token, what do you call your clients? Patients, clients?
I call them clients. Yeah.
Clients. What does your client have to buy in, or do they have to make a decision that they're going to allow this to happen?
Yes, because as with any type of positive change, you have to choose the change, right? If you've got your heels dug in and you don't want to believe something, there's nothing that I can do that's going to change your mind until you decide to change your mind, right?
Gotcha.
That's why I always have a complimentary discovery call with folks to see what is it that they're dealing with. How can I be of best assistance? Because there's different ways to work with me. And if they're really invested in creating the positive change, because some people will show up like, oh, I'm kind of curious about this hypnosis thing. And I'm like, well, if you want to kick the tires, I'm probably not your gal, right? But if you're interested in doing serious, deep dive, positive change in your life, then absolutely I'm the person to talk to, because I get amazing results for my clients.
It sounds very much like the joke about the psychologist and the light bulb. Do you know that one?
No, I don't.
How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
One, but the light bulb has to want to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you were saying before I came on talking about narcissists, I've worked with a lot of clients who have had narcissists in their lives, right? Narcissists are people, and one of your jokes pointed to this. How can you help me, right? They don't necessarily want to change. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. They think life is fine and well and good as long as they're able to control and manipulate people who are around them. So getting out of a relationship that involves a narcissist can be very tricky, as you said. And can be very debilitating to someone's sense of self-worth and self-esteem. That's why getting out is really an important thing to reclaim your sense of self.
It almost seems to me, from the way you were describing imposter syndrome, that people suffering, especially if they have a deep-seated imposter syndrome issue, that those people would almost be the perfect victim for a narcissist.
Yes, absolutely. As I said, I've worked with a lot of clients who are overcoming their own self-doubt and imposter syndrome because of the narcissists that they've had in their family. I worked with a young woman actually earlier this year who has a very highly narcissistic mother. And it created such a level of high anxiety and perfectionism in her that she became frozen and could no longer leave her house. I had to drop out of college because she couldn't go to class, right? And so, and working with her, we're able to help her release some of those old beliefs that her mother had literally, implanted in her understanding of self, change them out, re-empowered her with new beliefs about herself, to the point of, she was able to re-enroll in school and, was really back on track with achieving her goals and graduating.
Are most of your clients female?
Actually, I have a really interesting mix. It kind of toggles between men and women, is on a 60-40 mix sometimes. So
Gotcha. The reason I ask that question is because, anxiety is usually something that's presented as a female problem, even today. And I was just wondering if a great deal of that anxiety has to do with the socialization of women in our society.
That's an interesting question. I do have a lot of women who come to me with anxiety issues, and I've had many men as well, right? So, yes, there is the causes of our society embedded in women, and the mindset and the roles that we are seen to be, need to take. But that goes both ways as well. I had a client that I worked with a couple of years ago who came to me with severe anxiety. He was a 30-year veteran in his expertise, and he knew what he needed to be doing, but for whatever reason, he was waking up in the middle of the night, was really anxious, which led to procrastination. His productivity went down, his numbers went down. And when we first started working together, I always do a deep intake with clients, and he's like, well, yeah, my mother was kind of abusive to me, but I've dealt with that. I forgave her. She's since passed. I'm like, okay, right. But what we got at through the hypnotherapy was, well, it wasn't really dealt with to the degree that it needed to be, right? Find a deeper healing there, reclaim his confidence, get back to high levels of production, and even playing his ukulele again.
Well, I could definitely understand. Men have certain there are certain societal expectations that men don't necessarily conform to. They do on the surface, but underneath they don't see themselves as those people.
Right. Which thus it creates imposter syndrome of the male version versus the female version. And they do look different for sure. But there's different root causes oftentimes.
I could definitely appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to segue into what you do in regard to divorce. All right, and see how we can tie all of that together. You're listening to Divorcing Your Mortgage. I'm your host, Marc Gertz. Our guest, Michele Molitor, and we'll be right back after this. And we're back on Divorcing Your Mortgage. I'm your host, Marc Gertz. Our guest this week is Michele Molitor. She is a coach, hypnotherapist, speaker, and author. Michele, before the break, we were talking about anxiety and we were talking about imposter syndrome, both in men and women. In divorce, I'm sure when you have a client that's going through a divorce, it brings an added layer to all of this, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because going through a divorce can be soul crushing depending on who's doing the divorcing and how that all materialized, right? I don't think anybody gets married with the idea that, oh, I'm just going to get divorced in a year or two, right? That's not the thought. And so when going through that challenge, there's a lot of recalibration of who am I now that has to happen. Of who do I want to be moving forward as a single person, not as this unit that I was or thought I was going to be, because the glass box gets shattered of, oh, this is what I thought my life was going to be. And, oh, now it doesn't look that way. Whether that's after a year or 30 years, I think the impact is still the same. It just, the roots go deeper.
Do you find at all that people who suffer from imposter syndrome get into a marriage situation and then there's an element of codependency there because the other spouse is compensating for one feeling like an imposter, and then when the marriage comes apart, they don't know where to go?
That's very true. When we have a deeper sense of self-doubt, when we don't believe in ourselves or trust our intuition fully, all which are symptoms of imposter syndrome, that can lead to a whole host of codependent behaviors, right? And then when a relationship comes undone, then oftentimes those individuals are left with, gosh, now who am I? And that imposter syndrome can actually get much bigger and become more pervasive and debilitating if they're not able to get assistance, right? Getting someone to talk to is really important. And I completely agree with you Divorce attorneys are great at the paperwork, the legalities of going through a divorce. They're not counselors, they're not therapists, they're not coaches necessarily. And so getting someone to talk to about the emotional side of what you're going through, not just the economics and the paperwork of it all, is really important so that you can find your center, you can find your feet again, as I like to say, right? To get regrounded, so that you can consciously go into those conversations, right, without getting so triggered, and make more clear-headed decisions, because our emotions live in a different part of our brain. And when Amy gets triggered, when your amygdala gets triggered, she literally can hijack your logical thinking mind. And that's when we get caught in the deer in the headlights look, like, what? I don't know what to say, or you lose your words because your emotions have now taken over. So it's really important to get the support that you need when going through a divorce.
Can you share with us in this situation, in a divorce situation, you have somebody that has imposter syndrome and they're in this incredible high anxiety situation. What would be some tools to sort of tame that type of anxiety?
Sure. Well, the first thing to do is breathe, right? When your amygdala hijacks your brain, you literally go into that mode of just trying to protect yourself. You can't think clearly. You can't make wise decisions. So breathing a couple of deep breaths is the first and foremost thing you can do to start to calm your nervous system down a little bit, right? And to notice the conversation that's happening inside of your mind. What's that little voice of self-doubt, of fear, of anxiety? What is it saying to you? And is it really true? Is it factual, or is it assumptive, right? Because if you're just making assumptions, then that oftentimes will get you in trouble. So taking time to step back and write out, if you can, what's the dialogue that you're having with yourself, so that you can see more clearly what the steps need to be to move forward.
Are there different types of self-doubt?
Yes, actually. I found there are 5 different self-doubt archetypes. There is the procrastinating perfectionist. These are friends who end up procrastinating or overworking something because they want it to be perfect before they can put it out into the world or have anybody judge it. The shapeshifter is someone who's really masterful at juggling multiple roles. They're extreme people pleasers. And these are the folks often that do this because of having a narcissistic person in their life. The third one is the reluctant resistor. These are friends who are too afraid to be seen or judged or rejected for their work. So they're reluctant to take on new challenges and will hide out because of that fear of failure. There's the anxious avoider, my own personal favorite from a few years ago. They are so scared of being rejected for not having all the answers, right? They feel they have to do it all by themselves, right? That little 6-year-old kicks in and their arms crossed. And then the last one is the fearful follower. And these are the folks who really just don't trust their own gut because they've been beaten down so badly emotionally. So they're always trusting the advice of other people, following other people, and hiding out in the shadows instead of trusting their own gut instincts and expertise.
Do these archetypes consistently impede on people's peace of mind and success?
They absolutely do. There's typically 1 or 2 that drives the bus more often than not. I kind of jokingly say, these are like the 5 love languages of self-doubt, right? Okay. And there's 1 or 2 that is more of a driver than others. But people listening might go, oh, I resonate with all 5 of those, which can be true. But there's often going to be that one that is really their pervasive one, so to speak.
It sounds very much like in the sense that people usually lead with 1 or 2 senses.
Yes.
In the same way. So it almost sounds like the subconscious is mirroring that with regard to self-doubt.
Absolutely, right? Your subconscious is 90% of your brain power, right? Versus your conscious 10% mind. So all your emotions, past, present, and future, live in your subconscious mind. And that's what's going to drive your behaviors. Bearing that in mind, that's why getting at things at that deeper subconscious level is so powerful to help people rapidly heal their hearts and their minds and their spirits.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like it's a very yin-yang relationship between the hypnotherapy and the coaching.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to dig down deeper with regard to imposter syndrome, divorce, and archetypes. Okay? You're listening to Divorce Your Mortgage. I'm Marc Gertz. We'll be right back after this. And we're back on Divorcing Your Mortgage. My guest, Michele Molitor, hypnotherapist, coach, speaker, and author. Michele, just to digress for a moment, you've written 3 books so far, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Tell us about your last one.
The last one is called Breakthrough Healing. It was a collaboration with several other coaches from around the country, all about different natural healing modalities to help folks get at the root causes of their limiting beliefs. And in it, I talk about my rapid rewiring methodology that I use that combines coaching and hypnotherapy to help people heal.
Let's talk about rapid rewiring. We mentioned that at the beginning of our time together. What is it? How do you do it? And what does it accomplish?
So rapid rewiring is the combination of coaching and hypnotherapy over a period of 3 to 6 months, typically. Coaching allows me to work with my clients at that conscious level. Hypnotherapy allows me to work with them at that deeper subconscious level to get at the root causes of the pain, the fear, the blocks that are leading to the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, the anxiety that is holding them back from living their best lives. So together, I'm able to help people eliminate the fear and emotion from their nervous system and rewire their mind, heart, and spirit with new empowering beliefs and habits and strategies for greater success so they can make really powerful quantum leaps from where they are to where they want to go more quickly.
Wow. There's a lot going on in that book. Are you working on a 4th?
I am. It's going to come out later this year. I'm collaborating with a colleague of mine. It's called I Am Perfectly Flawsome, How Embracing Imperfection Makes Us Better.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Do you know where that's going to be available when it comes?
It'll be available on Amazon just before Christmas.
Nice. Just in time for people to give it to somebody that they like very much, who's not going to understand why they're getting it.
Exactly.
There you go. So one of the things you talk about with regard to rapid rewiring is something you call being unshakable. Can you explain to us what you mean when you say unshakable?
Absolutely. So I've created a whole program and membership to help people overcome their fear and their self-doubt. That's what I mean by being unshakable. When you step away from your fear, your self-doubt, and you step into reclaiming your confidence, your sense of value and worth, owning your true dignity, that's what has you become unshakable, no matter what life throws at you, because life is always going to throw us curveballs, right? So, being able to handle those when they do show up with greater grace and ease and not losing yourself to the old triggers or the pain or the fear that has you kind of fall down the rabbit hole, if you will.
Well, unshakable sounds like an amazing goal. Is there any way over the radio like this that you can help folks to understand how you do that?
Well, it's a process of understanding what those deeper self-doubts are so that you can start to recognize your own sense of value and worth. And so the simplest, easiest first step that any of your listeners can take, Mark, is really just repeating to themselves, I am enough, just as I am and just as I'm not. I am enough. Rinse, repeat. And the more you say it to yourself, the more it will drop down into your long-term memory, right? Because your brain loves repetition. That's what builds those new neural pathways, right? Repeating things to yourself. So by telling yourself you are enough, it will sink in more and more fully to the point where you start to believe it and recognize it and own it, so that you can move into the other parts of your life with more and more confidence.
It's one of the things that I find very interesting about what you talk about is the simplicity of it. You talk about breathing. You talk about creating your own mantra of I am enough. It kind of reminds me about something that I went through earlier in the year. I had some spine surgery, and as part of the rehab, they told me that I had to walk 20 minutes a day, which, it's like, what's the big deal if I do or if I don't walk 20 minutes a day? But I was trying not to subscribe to the biggest problem in medicine, which is non-compliance, and do what I was told by the doctors. But I had to manipulate myself because the idea of walking for 20 minutes a day sounded like impossible. So I realized at one point, I don't need to walk for 20 minutes. I only need to walk for 10 and then walk back.
Right, exactly.
Right. So, and the funny thing about it is, it's incredible what a difference a 20-minute walk makes in your entire day. It's all of these little things. And I'm hearing that in you too. It seems to me that the ultimate result of what you do with people is just change a few little things, and all of a sudden it changes all the wiring.
Yes, it creates a powerful cascade effect when you eliminate the root cause and reset your thinking about it. And it's like you go through life with blinders on, and then suddenly you take the blinders off, and it's like, oh, wow, look at all this other life that is available to me that I didn't even know.
If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
You can find me at michelemolitor.com. I'm sure it'll all be in the show notes. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram at Rapid Rewire. And I'm always happy to have a complimentary conversation with someone who's interested in creating powerful change in their lives.
Terrific. Michele Molitor, thank you so much for being a guest. Thank you to our listening audience. You've been listening to Divorcing Your Mortgage. I'm your host, Marc Gertz. Get home safe. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next week.